looking back. The forest seemed to swallow the light. The trees, gnarled and ancient, loomed over the path like skeletal guardians, their branches, bare and twisted, intertwined overhead, forming a suffocating canopy. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Beneath my feet the path was littered with broken branches and fallen leaves. Each step I took was accompanied by a chorus of crunching and snapping. The sound echoed through the woods, amplified by the unnatural silence. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, watching me, waiting. I pressed on, my unease growing with each step. The shadows seemed to lengthen, stretching towards me like grasping claws. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my own breath and the frantic beating of my heart. I felt a chill run down my spine, a primal fear that whispered of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. The silent grove was living up to its name, and I was beginning to regret my curiosity. The deeper I ventured into the silent grove, the more oppressive the silence became. It wasn't simply the absence of sound, but a suffocating stillness that pressed down on me, stealing my breath. The rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets, the distant calls of birds, all the familiar sounds of nature were gone, replaced by an unnerving quiet. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, suspending all life within its grasp. The very air seemed thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that crackled with unseen energy. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed by something unseen. The silence was unnerving, amplifying every rustle of leaves beneath my feet, every creak of a branch overhead. Each sound sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, my senses on high alert. I found myself constantly turning, scanning the shadows, searching for the source of the unseen eyes that I could feel upon me. But there was nothing there, just the oppressive silence and the growing sense of dread that tightened its grip on my chest with every step I took. The path, barely discernible now, led me to a clearing. There, shrouded by the oppressive gloom of the woods, stood a dilapidated cabin. Its once white paint was now a peeling, sickly grey, and the windows were boarded shut, giving the impression of sightless eyes staring out from the darkness. The roof sagged in the middle, as if burdened by the weight of the secrets it held. Despite its decrepit state, the cabin exuded a strange pull, drawing me closer. Curiosity, now mingled with a growing sense of unease, urged me forward. I cautiously approached, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the stillness. As I drew closer, I noticed a faint glow emanating from beneath the boarded-up window. It flickered like a dying ember, casting dancing shadows that stretched and twisted in the gathering darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of fear and morbid fascination, urging me closer. I reached out a trembling hand and knocked on the rough-hewn door. The sound echoed through the clearing, swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. Whispers from the past. The door creaked open, revealing a darkened interior. Musty air, heavy with decay, wafted out. I hesitated, heart pounding, before stepping inside. The cabin's interior was shrouded in shadow. Dust motes danced in the stale air. In the center stood a rough-hewn table with a leather-bound journal. Drawn by an unseen force, I reached for the journal. Section 6. A Figure in the Gloom. As I delved deeper into the journal, the writer's words became increasingly frantic. He spoke of being watched, followed by something sinister lurking in the woods. His once neat script devolved into hurried scratches filled with fear and desperation. The last entry ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as if the writer had been interrupted. Suddenly a sound pierced the silence. It was a low moan, coming from somewhere deep within the cabin. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and a primal fear, cold and sharp, gripped me in its icy claws. Then A flicker of movement in the shadows caught my eye. It was faint at first, a fleeting glimpse of something moving just beyond the edge of my vision. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest, straining to see through the gloom. The flickering light from the window illuminated the figure for a fleeting moment. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the shadows. But in that brief instant I saw enough. Its eyes, burning with an unnatural light, locked onto mine, and a cold dread washed over me, paralyzing me with terror. Section 7. Flight into silence. Terror lent me speed. I didn't hesitate, didn't think, I just ran. I scrambled back from the table, knocking over the chair in my haste. The sound echoed through the cabin, swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. The journal slipped from my grasp, its pages scattering across the dusty floor. But I didn't stop to retrieve it. I was already at the door, my hand fumbling for the latch. My breath came in ragged gasps, my chest constricting with fear. I stumbled out of the cabin and into the suffocating embrace of the silent grove. The woods seemed to press in on me, the trees reaching out with skeletal branches as if to bar my escape. But I didn't slow down, not even for a moment. I ran blindly, my feet pounding on the uneven ground, my lungs burning. The only sound was the frantic beating of my heart and the panicked gasps for air that escaped my lips. But even above the roar of blood in my ears, I could hear it, the silence heavy and oppressive closing in behind me. Proof in the shadows. I didn't stop running until I burst out of the tree line, gasping for breath. The setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the clearing. It was as if the silent grove was watching me. I risked a glance back over my shoulder. The woods were dark and silent. I stumbled back to my car, my hand shaking. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Later that night, as I scrolled through the photos on my phone, my blood ran cold. There was a face peering from the shadows. Section 9. Haunted by the unknown. The face in the photo haunted my dreams. It was a gaunt, skeletal visage, its features contorted in a grotesque mockery of a smile. Its eyes, burning with an unholy light, seemed to follow me wherever I went, piercing through the veil of sleep to torment my waking hours. The memory of that night in the silent grove clung to me like a shroud, suffocating the joy from my days and filling my nights with a cold, nameless dread. The rational part of me tried to dismiss it all as a trick of the light, a figment of my overactive imagination, but deep down, I knew the truth. The silent grove was more than just a haunted place. It was a living entity, a place of ancient and malevolent power that fed on the fear of those who dared to trespass upon its domain. And I had looked into its heart, and it had looked back into mine. Section 10. The Silent Grove Watches. Now I am left with more questions than answers. Who was the figure in the cabin? What became of the journal's author? And what is the true nature of the evil that lurks within the Silent Grove? These are questions that may never be answered, but they continue to haunt me, whispering in the shadows of my mind. I have never returned to the Silent Grove, and I never will. The memory of that night is enough to keep me away, but sometimes when the wind whispers through the trees, I imagine I can still hear the silence. And in the depths of my nightmares, I see those glowing eyes, watching me, waiting for me to return. The Silent Grove is out there, shrouded in shadow and steeped in fear, and it is watching, waiting.